This meeting is being recorded.
Very good. I'm not hearing anything. Is something happening? I'm not hearing anything.
Eric, we're waiting for the amount of people to grow, and
Yeah.
we'll give it a start ourselves. It'll take 2 or 3 minutes, okay?
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pierre Pacina, and I'm a glider pilot from Enemonzo Flight Center in the northeast side of Italy. This is the last event of this season, and then we can start gliding again. With our club ACAO from Varese, we decided to organize this particular evening because we truly believe that it's time to open our windows to the future for our sport. I kindly ask to Eric Raymond, the father of the solar glider Sunseek duo, to open the window in the future with us, with his experience and his futuristic vision of the solar gliding. A big thank to Eric to be here with us tonight, sharing his long experience in this area. I'm sure with his mate, he will make you dreaming. One of the coordinators tonight will be Andrea Venturini, a new pilot that last 2 years has done an amazing job promoting our sport and especially gliding sites on our country all over the world. He was lucky to fly with Alberto Sironi and is sharing this great opportunity through photos, video, and his article published in Sideplane and Gliding magazine. And last but not least, the Facebook page he manages, Gliding and Soaring, that allow thousands of people to experience the beauty of our sport through this media. I will now introduce Mr. Aldo Cernezzi, our moderator for this evening. I know we will have a lot of questions, and for this reason, I ask you to pay attention to the word of Alberto Sironi, who will explain how to place them. Okay, let's open this session. Have a nice evening, everybody. See you.
Grazie Pierfax, buonasera a tutti, benvenuti. Giusto 2 parole in italiano e poi verranno anche tradotte in inglese. Giusto un'informazione, questo è un webinar, come oramai forse sapete già tutti, non avete un video o un microfono, però potete fare, naturalmente vedete video, sentite l'audio, sentite il relatore e i moderatori e potete fare domande con la question and answer o domande e risposte. È un bottone nella parte bassa dello schermo e vi risponderemo, prevalentemente gireremo queste domande a Eric, che quindi vi risponderà personalmente. Quindi a questo punto io non ho altre, la chat magari la usate solo per dei saluti, per delle considerazioni, per dei complimenti o delle critiche, ma se invece vi aspettate una risposta durante il webinar, usate per favore question and answer. Lascio a questo punto la parola ad Aldo che introdurrà Eric e modererà la serata. Grazie e buona visione.
Thank you very much, Alberto. Alberto Sironi, a very famous Italian recordman in gliding and owner of Alpha Test, is hosting this event thanks to his Zoom facilities, professional Zoom facilities. We panelists are all working from home, let's say working. We are in fact enjoying this evening. The seminar is organized via Zoom in the form of a webinar. That means Eric will be presenting his work, adventures, and the building of his solar-powered aircraft in one direction communication to the public. All the participants may write greetings, as everybody's already been doing in the chat line. If you look below your screen in Zoom, you will see chat. That's for sharing hello, goodbyes, how are you, etc. While the Q&A, questions and answers sections, domande e risposte, is for asking something in written form. We panelists will be alleviating the work by Eric. We will be reading both the chat and the Q&A lines, and we will report questions to Eric when we think it will be the appropriate moment, or sometimes we may answer directly if we know the exact answer to your question. So I'd say thank you, everybody, for being here. We have extremely qualified participation from all over the world. We have seen lots of greetings, Eric. Lots of greetings to you from Jean-Marie Clément, from
I see some from Arizona and New Mexico also.
Exactly, from Scotland, from Florida, yeah, from Germany, from Slovenia, and from Switzerland, etc., and from Central California.
Yes,
now,
Jean-Marie Clément also.
Texas. That's great. We really have a qualified participation. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Centro Volo Vela Enemonzo, Charlie Victor November Echo, for organizing this, and thank you to the club I own. I'm a member of ACAO, Alpha Charlie Alpha Oscar Club in Varese too. So thank you, everyone. Eric, it's your turn now. Thank you very much for being here.
Well, before I start the presentation, I'll just show the solar cells I'm using. They're from SunPower Corporation, and they're the very low-cost cells used on houses. So, and I have a little piece of the wing here. You can see, and it's spar caps are carbon prepreg, so it's a little bit higher technology than a normal sailplane, but very similar. So you can see it's strong enough, but you'll see more. So I start the presentation now, I guess.
It also seems like it's very, very light.
Yes. Okay, so wait, I'm touching share screen. Okay. So I have to click on this and start, and then go. Oops, no, I have to minimize. No, minimize that.
Too kind of you. Better.
Okay, like that. So, yes, I'd like to make some comments about this first picture I chose. I took this picture in 2009 during a national sailplane competition in Slovenia, and it was not a very good day. You can see it's mostly cloudy this day. And I flew for about 1 hour with the competitors. You can see 3 of them here flying around under the clouds, very low cloud base. And I'm sure they thought that my glider was pretty slow and maybe not really the best glider in the sky, but after about an hour, I became bored, so I just went up over the clouds and explored for a while. And so it's really a completely different animal because you can take advantage of the sunlight above the clouds. So let me give a definition of a solar-powered airplane. The accepted definition now is an airplane that can maintain level flight on direct solar power. And of course, that's not true at all times. We're talking about at least 4 hours in the summertime. So it needs a big wing, as you can see here. I'm getting about 4.5 kilowatts from this wing, which is more than enough for level flight, as you'll see. But I'm going to be jumping around from some different topics. So this is a table of contents. So let's get started. And please stop me if I'm going too fast or something. So I test flew the Sunseeker Duo at Voghera, Rivanazzano Airport, just at the base of the Apennine Mountains. And it was really a perfect place because we had unlimited use of the runway. I made a lot of runway flights where I just flew straight line. And we really were able to test the airplane very well. It was a perfect place to test fly this airplane, and excellent soaring. So we're limited to the airspace. This is the absolute limit of airspace restrictions here because of approach to Milan and Genoa. So, and here's my wife who helped me build the airplane. And this was, we made a cross-country flight to Pavulo, which is another wonderful airport, and you'll see more about that later. And
it's higher
also,
in the mountains.
Yes, it's a beautiful place. This is right after we returned. We just landed coming back from Pavulo, and we actually are flying all year, every month. Even in the winter time, we had some very good winters flying in Voghera at the Apennine Mountains, north end. And they have an active glider club. You can see their hangar and their trailers there. And just some beautiful castles. And you can see the Mediterranean in the distance. So even in the winter time. And I would like to point out in this picture, you can see my wingtip is very up here. When I first started flying the airplane, I had 12 degrees of dihedral on this part of the wing, but later I reduced it. Now it's only 3 degrees. I found out that I don't need so much stability on the wings. So, and it's also better for the solar power to not have so much dihedral in the wingtips. So anyway, flying at Voghera. So a little bit of history. This is my first solar-powered airplane that I built between 1986 and 1990, but it does not qualify as a solar-powered airplane because this was very thin amorphous solar cells that only produce 250 watts. So really this was a glider that could recharge its batteries slowly in the air, but I was able to fly it across the United States in 21 flights. So you'll see a little more about that later. And later I built a new wing for that same airplane. And then it became a real solar powered airplane because now it has, let me think, it had, I think 1.5 kilowatts. So much more power. And this
what was the wingspan of this?
This is 17 meters wingspan. And it's, yeah, the 16.5 actually. Yeah, this one was actually more wingspan. This was 17 and this was a little bit less, but more wing area. So And yes, here it is on a dry lake bed. A friend of mine had a solar powered drone. You see it here, that this is the first solar airplane that made a 24-hour flight and 48-hour flight. And we're flying it from inside this trailer here.
Is this the one by engineer Cocconi?
Alan Cocconi,
Alan
yes.
Cocconi.
Yes, he was a very important member of my team, and he made peak power trackers, and he helped me build the motor for this airplane, for example. So he helped me with a lot of the electronics. Very good. Yes, he's actually Swiss Italian. Cocconi is an Italian name, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he speaks French though, not Italian. I'm sorry. He's from Switzerland, actually. So now I'm going to describe typical mission. This was our flight to the islands of Elba and Corsica. And what I'd like to describe here, we took off Voghera in not very good conditions. And if you can see my mouse arrow here, about where I have the mouse was when we stopped soaring and we just went on solar power. So the rest of this flight was a combination of batteries, but we made it to Elba with more than half the battery full. So we realized we could have easily gone to Corsica, even all the way to the south end of Sardinia, because we had a north wind. But I was a bit worried about flying across the ocean, so we were very chicken on the first flight. But this was the entire expedition. There was one day missing for a thunderstorm that you'll see about later. So let me just show you. When we started, we didn't have very good conditions. We had low cloud bases, and in the Apennines, it can be really no place to land if you have a power failure or can't find lift. So we're definitely not that comfortable in the mountains, and even at cloud base, you're still barely making it over the ridges. But at this point, I'm looking for this kind of an opportunity where I can go full throttle with my motor and go right up here where my mouse. Do you see my mouse circling here?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I need the climb rate, because sometimes I prefer not to have to turn back or fly in the clouds, but the idea is to go over the clouds. And the rest of the day, we had no more cloud problems because we were on top. So we're heading directly for Elba, and we come to this interesting mine for marble just over town of Masa. It's amazing industry there, and you'll see more about that on our way back. So this here is Masa Airport, one of our emergency landing possibilities. It's only a grass strip right across the street from the ocean. And we ended up landing there on our way back. So you'll see more about that later too. This is the airport at Pisa, famous for the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And heading offshore. These pictures remind me that I need to paint black this inside of this railing here. It's ruining my pictures with these reflections. And yes, here's my wife bravely watching the navigation as we go offshore. So I'd like, yeah, this is Piombino.
Correct.
And then the beginning of Elba here. So we had our life jackets ready, but I wanted to point out that just for flying over the ocean, I installed an emergency propeller brake. This is a hydraulic bicycle brake, which in case of a complete power failure, because I always try to keep land within gliding range. However, if I have a power failure, the propeller will keep windmilling and it creates a lot of drag. So with this hydraulic brake, I can stop the propeller even without electricity and then become a very good glider again. So this was installed just for the ocean flights. But
if I remember correctly, the propeller feathers when it's not turning.
the correct term is it folds. Feathering is different. Feathering is
It
not.
folds like this, yeah.
Folds back. So anyway, we're headed out to sea and coming to the island of Elba. You can see Corsica here in the distance, which is always covered with this whipped cream on top, which is one reason we were worried about getting there late in the day, because it's a lot of overdevelopment on Corsica. So approaching this beautiful island, very clear water and harbor. And here's the airport. It's really the only place you could possibly land. There's no outlanding possibilities anywhere on Elba. And they gave us a very nice hangar for the night. And the next morning, there was still north wind, and we had to take off into this downdraft. There's a wind, north wind blowing right over this hill. And I was thinking I might have to sneak through some low point, but we were able to climb fast enough. And we tried some soaring on the north side of Elba, but we really didn't get very high. And we were thinking we were much higher the day before. So we're actually starting quite low for our crossing, but it was no problem. Here you can see Corsica coming. But when we left Elba, we couldn't even see Corsica. It was just haze in the distance. But it feels funny to fly a glider like this out over the ocean, but it was no problem. Now the problem is clouds. So we made it to the middle of the north. There's an airport right here. This is Corte. And we landed, this was our departure airport that we chose to leave from when we returned. You'll see more of Corte later. We wanted to land by the ocean though and go for a swim. We didn't want to be in the hot desert. So we had to cross the highest peaks of Corsica. And this was really tricky because the clouds and mountains were meeting together, and we had to just sneak through. But once we're on the other side, it was beautiful. And what's interesting, on Corsica has wonderful soaring conditions, but you have all these different layers. You can see here, one cloud base is here, high, and on the other side is a much lower cloud base, but they have sea breeze convergences on all sides. It's wonderful because the wind blows always on shore during the summertime from all directions. And it's really good soaring. There is a glider club. I've been there on the ground, but this is where we landed for the first day. This is
Propiano.
Yes, wonderful place. And you can go swimming right there at the airport. And here I am. Actually, I think I'm putting the wings on the next day. And our driver brought the drone, so we got some air-to-air pictures over the ocean. Very beautiful. That looks like a model airplane. So small. Yeah, the funny thing was that to get to town, because we went to a restaurant and actually stayed in a hotel the first night, and that we had to swim across this part. That's the only way. It's much too far to go the other direction. So, but I was able to swim with all of our luggage across there. So it's funny that it had that. So after a few days of flying on Corsica, we went to Corte, and the funny thing was we had to send our camper van following us along, but because of the so few ferries, we had to send the van ahead of us. The van left before the airplane, so we were committed. We were alone. This is after the water. These are the waterproof covers we use overnight. So he took the covers. We don't fly with these. And we had very interesting conditions. As you can see, there was
Eric,
thermals.
one quick question from one of our listeners. they want to know, so did you charge at night, the batteries every night, more or less? And you started with or you used the solar?
We never charged. Not once. We didn't even have the opportunity. None of the airports offered us electricity. No, we never charged.
And so tell us in the morning, what kind of
Yes.
power did you have available from your pack, from your batteries?
It was always, well, okay, that's an interesting question because it's not healthy for the lithium batteries to fill them up to 100% or to run them down to 0%. The lithium batteries are the happiest between 20% and 80%. So for a big flight, like crossing the ocean, naturally I charge them 100%. But we charge them on the ground from the solar panels. As soon as the wings are attached, we get several kilowatts just sitting on the ground. So, but we never plugged the airplane in on any trip yet. We've never had to use the charger, but we would need, you know, a extension cord, and it's not convenient. So anyway, yeah, the strategy is to gain as much altitude inland as possible with thermals. And I take my time, like I stay on Corsica until I'm at cloud base and the batteries are full. So I have all the energy I could dream of. I'm up high altitude, batteries are full, time to go over the ocean.
How many kilowatt hours do you have when it's full?
I have 8 kilowatt hours.
Thank you. 8. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Running the motor at 16 kilowatts, so that would translate to 30 minutes of full power.
So that means almost 200 kilometers distance at the same level.
200.
Yeah.
No. We had to make a flight last year in Switzerland at sunset, so there was no sun, and it was, let me think, 80 miles. That was 120. Actually, the number I gave you was from when the batteries were new, and the batteries are not new. So I think that it's less now.
Okay.
Yeah, we were at a event in Switzerland last year, and we were flying back, or I was actually delivering the airplane from Voghera to Osopo, and I went to Switzerland, the north of Switzerland first, and it took me 2.5 days from basically Bern, north of Bern, Switzerland, to Osopo. But I had a headwind, and yeah, the first day, no sun, and it was 80 miles, so it's, I think, 120 kilometers.
Maybe 130.
Maybe
130.
Yeah, just on batteries. But anyway, the biggest airport on Corsica is right here. This is Bastia, I think. Oh, Bastia, yeah, right here. It's the runway. I was looking for a better picture. So this is an island I've looked at carefully because you could land on this. It's flat, but I can't imagine what the retrieval would be like because there's not even a ferry. But here's Elba over here, and I can tell you there's no outlanding possibilities anywhere on Elba, just the ocean or the airport. So, and several of the other islands look like this also off of Pisa. It's just, I think one of them is actually Monte Cristo, and it's one of my favorite movies, The Count of Monte Cristo. I flew over his island where that treasure was found. So I don't know if you've seen that movie, but there is an island, Monte Cristo. I wonder if there's any gold coins out there, probably. So we're trying to fly from Corsica to Voghera, and it's looking pretty good, but the further north we go, it's more and more of this piled up whipped cream, and we were told there was a big thunderstorm the next day, some low pressure coming through. So I don't like going under and going over. You know, you look at some spaces here and you say, yeah, it's possible, but it just blossoms up, and I've been trapped sometimes. I don't like getting trapped on top. So we decided to stop at Masa. Here's the airfield. We had plenty of altitude, as you can see. So this was, we stayed 2 nights because of this thunderstorm. And I had these waterproof covers, and the airplane was overnight here just behind the trees. And this big thunderstorm was coming the next day, but I told my wife, don't worry, the thunderstorm will only be over the mountains. The thunderstorm will not come to the beach. Oh, yeah, this was breakfast the second day, but the thunderstorm made a direct hit, and it was breaking branches off of trees and fantastic wind directly from the mountains. But luckily, the friendly pilots at Masa let us hide the airplane at the last minute in this hangar. Otherwise, it would have been destroyed. And I can tell you from my reception on Corsica, there was an empty hangar at Propriano, but they would not let us use the hangar, even if there was a thunderstorm. So I was happy to be back on friendly Italian soil, because they really saved my airplane. It even got wet in the hangar. It was so windy.
You can see.
But, yeah, this was just a crazy, crazy thunderstorm I have never seen. And they said it never happens, but. And we were there specifically to avoid the thunderstorm. But anyway, one day later, I'm taxiing down their taxiway to take off. And here I'm ready to take off from almost sea level on grass and climb up this amazing quarry. It was really interesting watching how they cut the stone. I suppose Masa, this area is famous for this white marble. All of the sidewalks and benches in the town were made from this material. It was really, and it was some interesting soaring conditions here because of very, very low cloud bases, but further inland, you can just see it's just one bridge back and it's much higher. So I actually, my strategy here was I needed to just stay here for at least 30 minutes just to recharge my batteries so that I could reach the Apennines. So, but it was a wonderful view of both the ocean and mountains and clouds. And finally, I set out for the Apennines.
So do you mean in about half an hour of level flight, you can recharge the batteries of the amount you have used for launching?
No, the motor is off. As soon as I find a cloud or even, just zero sync, I'm only recharging the batteries when the motor is off.
So half an hour with the engine off is enough to recharge after launch?
Yes.
That's quite efficient.
Well, yes. Well, no, if the batteries are completely empty, it's closer to an hour, but it really depends on the day and the altitude, because at 3,000 meters, for example, it's much faster. The sun is much more powerful. The colder the solar panels are, the more electricity they produce. So my favorite altitude is at least 3,000 meters. So anyway, we're, back on the Apennines, and this is the point where I'm actually on final glide back to Voghera. So obviously the cloud bases were much better when we returned than when we started. So, and here I am back home. There's Dino, airport manager. I don't know if anybody knows Voghera and Dino, but there he is. So now I'm going to give a little background about myself. Started out with model airplanes, first plastic scale models, mostly from Second World War. And then radio controlled models. Here's a glider with a little motor on top. But I was always designing things. You can see me here. This is how we used to do drawings with this big drafting board a long time ago. So I started flying myself with hang gliders in 1974. And I actually built my first one from plans. And then I switched to rigid wing hang gliders. And this one I built, and I actually set the world distance record on it, which is the last time a homemade hang glider set the distance record. It's been production ever since. And this was another one I designed, which had all composite spars already in 1985. These are carbon fiber spars, but I still used a lot of wires. Now they have eliminated almost all the wires.
Did you also build the spars?
Yes, yes, I molded these. This was in England at Airwave Gliders on the Isle of Wight.
So you got some FAI records with these gliders?
No, I had an FAI sporting license,
Yeah.
but it was very difficult in California because we had to file the documentation within 24 hours, and in the office in Washington, D.C., and it would be closed by the time we landed. And anyway, it became so difficult that I gave up on the FAI a long time ago. And with the solar powered airplanes, it's an entirely different story that I'm not going to tell, because for most of my career, there was no category for solar powered aircraft. But it was, Pierluigi Durante from Torino. He was the FAI representative trying to make the rules for solar powered aircraft. And the rule was that a solar powered aircraft could not carry a battery. And I carried batteries, so my airplane was not solar powered, but the modern definition now accepts batteries. So back to my story. In 1983, I started coming to the Alps, and I discovered what a wonderful place it is flying in Switzerland. And this was, I really decided where I wanted to be flying. And it's a wonderful community, a lot of enthusiasm. You can tell this pilot's obviously French by this cartoon. And this was in Chamonix, Mont Blanc. But we were just flying every day. I never went to any museums or anything, just fly, fly, fly cross country. And I was doing a lot of photography, which wasn't so easy back then. These cameras are heavy and the glider is sensitive to weight. So if this falls off, I would need to use my parachute. It's such a big apparatus to fly with. And I discovered that it was easy to land on top of the mountains with the hang glider. And I had my camping supplies inside here. You can see this shadow. So I found a lot of interesting places to land. And like this is a very high mountain where I was able to land, and I could spend the night in my little tent. And later a Swiss pilot took up the challenge. This is Didier Favre, Swiss champion, and he eventually made it from Monaco through the French Maritime Alps, all the way to Yugoslavia, right near where I live. And he wrote a book about this. And this has become popular now for the parapente. Paragliders are also flying and camping. So, but I was doing that and a lot of photography. And I developed the method of towing my camera just with these ropes here. It's the only way it's attached. And eventually I did a loop with the cameras only supported by these ropes here, which is really something to think about the night before. Heavy camera flying over me somehow on strings. So I didn't sleep well the night before, but you can see that it worked. And in the same year, we had the first Aerobatic Competition in Monaco. And I actually stipulated that it must be over the ocean, and it doesn't. This is me diving to do a loop, and it doesn't look like it, but I'm actually over the Mediterranean. I'm not over these houses, but the pictures were taken from a helicopter, so it's deceptive. And this was when I discovered just how good the German Zeiss lenses are. You could count my shoelaces from 1 kilometer away. I was very impressed with the quality of this photographer, Alain Guillot, French Perimatch photographer. So now I'm going to describe the history of these electric aircraft, because they're actually not new. As you can see, this is a motor glider that flew successfully, and I just discovered a link to the video, and it's clear to me that already you could make something. Here you can see the batteries and the brush type motor turning a reduction drive. So you have this large diameter propeller. And for 1973, this was actually pretty efficient. And I found a video where you can actually see the first flight. So it's would have been already possible with nickel cadmium batteries to reach soaring height, in my opinion. So it's just, everything's just been getting better and better as far as the technology goes. And a lot of the technology came from the human-powered aircraft. This is Paul Mccrady's Gossamer Condor being flown by Brian Allen, who I think is watching right now. It's from his house on the California coast. And this led to this remarkable airplane, the Paul Mccrady's Solar Challenger, which flew from Paris to London in 1981. And it had no batteries and even no electronics. The solar energy peak power tracker was a mechanical variable pitch propeller, and the pilot would just vary the pitch of the propeller until he found the sweet spot. So this was what really got me excited. I was interested in 1979, but I was very excited in 1981. And you can see the fleet. Yes.
Eric, Brian says it was the Gossamer Albatross, not Condor. Is it possible? No.
No, that is, I believe that's the Albatross had a much higher aspect ratio.
Okay. And there's one question regarding.
You might be right, but I thought this was the Albatross. No, I think the Albatross had the wings swept back a little more, so he might be right. Yep.
Yeah, there is a question. It might be relevant at the moment. Why did you choose the fin position for the engine on your Sunseeker instead of a front propeller, as we've seen in other aircraft in this presentation, like this one, like the Solar Challenger?
Well, the main reason is I wanted myself and my passengers to be as comfortable as possible, and I don't like the noise because, believe it or not, electric motors can be very loud, especially if there's a gearbox or something. But I wanted the motor as far from the cockpit as possible. But when you have a big fat fuselage, you don't want the propeller on the front. You want the propeller to have nothing in front of it and as much as nothing as possible behind it. So, but you'll see some more just a little bit later when I move ahead. But thank you, Brian, for correcting me. I'm going to actually check. I guess Brian knows these pictures since I think this is from Taurus Kosenek's collection, but yeah, maybe. Okay. Well, moving along.
Eric, one question. Do you have any preference between pushing propeller and pulling propellers? Do you think there is what's the rationality of choosing one against another, or efficiency or anything else?
Okay. So you'll notice that torpedoes are very, very fast. I'm sure you've heard that. And torpedoes have the propeller in the back. And for an airship, for example, that's the very best place is a pusher propeller in the back. Paul Mccrady, even one time when I was at lunch with him, he told me that a propeller on an airship on the back could be more than 100% efficient. And that's because it's re-energizing the boundary layer. So for a fat body, it's actually better. But on my single seater, I had the propeller behind the tail, and it made a lot of vibration because the propeller is hitting the turbulence from all three tail surfaces. So I'll explain more about that just a little bit later. So, but let me keep that question in mind when I have a better picture in front of me.
I will remind you.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been researching that topic quite a lot because this propeller you see here, you can even see they make marks showing the way it rotates. So there's a swirling, turbulent airflow, and when it strikes the wing and this vertical fuselage, it actually regains some energy because these act as straighteners for the airflow. So it increases the propeller efficiency to have these behind the propeller. So it really depends on the exact installation, also the center of gravity. For example, this pilot doesn't have such a good view because he's under the wing. And if the motor was in the back, the pilot would need to be further forward to balance the airplane, and then the pilot would have a better view. So I like to have the motor in the back so that the people can be in front of the wing and they get the perfect view. Because if you can picture this pilot turning in a thermal, he doesn't see the other gliders. He's blind. His wing is always blocking his view. And I hate flying gliders where I'm under the wing. There's been some two-seaters, like a Schweitzer 233, where the back seat can't see in a turn. So I'll get back to that. So working with Paul Mccrady's group, this is actually the designer of the Solar Challenger right here, Ray Morgan. And here, this is an ultralight sailplane that we eventually put gasoline motor on. But I flew this as a glider in competition. It was a folding glider that actually had some military applications later on. But I was also had the honor of flying the human-powered airplanes. This one built by Paul Mccrady, named the Bionic Bat. And this is actually a hybrid. It also had an electric motor that the pilot would store his energy in nickel-cadmium batteries. But I had to figure out this control system where you're using your feet only for pedaling. And these would be, in effect, the rudder pedals, except that they are reversed. And after learning this, I realized that all of our gliders and airplanes, they got the control correct, except for the rudders, I believe. And I've been a sailplane instructor for many years, and I've noticed how hard it is to teach people the rudder, and I believe the rudder is reversed. And a little more on that later. So, this was a human-powered airship built by one of Paul Mccrady's co-workers and test flown by Brian Allen. Also, he even set a cross-country record on this airship. But this would be a perfect candidate for having the propeller at the back. That would be the most efficient place. You certainly would not put the propeller on the front of this. That would be terrible. Just talk about propeller location. So it really depends on the aircraft. But this was the airplane that really changed my life. This is a German human-powered airplane with a completely cantilevered laminar flow wing, and the whole airplane only weighed 24 kilograms, and it was stressed for 3 Gs. So Gunther Rachel let me fly it, and here I am trying to figure out the controls. You imagine that you're holding the wings, so you twist the wing twist it forward for down, twist it back, and roll, and then yaw. As I said, you yaw this the same way you would want to yaw the airplane, which is exactly the opposite of a rudder bar. If anyone remembers when before rudder pedals, they just had a simple bar, but this is hooked up backwards. So it becomes really difficult if you already know how to use rudders, that now the rudder is reversed. So, but I think this method is correct, but it's too late to change aviation now. So our feet work the way they do. So yeah, this is me flying the Muscle 2 in Canada at Expo 86. And I was just amazed that this could go 50 kilometers an hour at 1/3 of a horsepower. So it immediately inspired me to try to build my own solar powered airplane using Gunther Rachot's technology. And he actually helped me. He gave me airfoils and he gave me a lot of advice. And this is the airplane that I built. It was about 45 kilograms when it first flew. This is just as a glider, no propeller, no motor, no solar cells. And we were towing it. You can see tow hook under the nose here, getting used to it. And then I put on these amorphous solar cells, and this is how I flew it across the United States in the summer of 1990. Here's a map showing the stops. And I also mounted cameras on it. This is a 70mm film camera on a very long boom. Obviously, I had to be careful flying with this, but I could get the whole wingspan in, which is now easy, of course, with the modern GoPros, but it wasn't so easy in 1990 with film cameras. So we made our own molds for the fuselage from styrofoam sheets. Expert taught me how to use water lines and how to shape the foam so that I had to imagine myself inside this solid thing, that I would have enough room. And here it is with the wing and the tail boom. And these are you can see the molds in the background here and the shells. The back part was ejectable for a ballistic parachute, and it also was fiberglass because it was a radio antenna in the very back part, vertical antenna. So there you can see, this is a load carrying shell. There was internal bulkheads, but it's not just a non-structural fairing. I was originally going to make it non-structural, but the internal structure took up too much space, so I made it load carrying with the seat and other bulkheads. So the wing was built up with many, many ribs, and I had D-cell batteries inside this foam tube here in the leading edge. So these were nickel cadmium batteries from Sanyo, and there was no mold for the wing. The skin was hand bent around. You can see the ribs showing there, and also the tail. The advantage being that there's no seam at the leading edge. This was also balanced with D-cell batteries in the leading edge. This is the all-moving vertical stabilizer. And you can see how the elevator worked. It's just cut from the original surface and made into a control surface. So here's the first Sunseeker ready for its flight across the United States. Oops. And here it is in Chanute, Kansas on my trip across. And this was actually in New Mexico, coming into Lordsburg. We had some really big thunderstorms in the deserts. Here I am landing with one of my ground crew bravely on the runway, Kenji Bamba. So I rebuilt the airplane later with lithium polymer batteries. These are the 4 packs that I initially flew with proper battery management system, and with this and the new solar cells, made it into a truly solar-powered airplane. And I rebuilt the instrument panel with every device I could think of for cross-country flights, and I had my hang gliding variometer as a backup here in case something went wrong. So I'm going to show a little bit about my dramatic crossing of the Alps. The weather wasn't so good, but I brought the ground crew from the United States to follow me. This was part of a big European tour expedition. And here I am ready to go on the runway and headed for the Alps, which seem to go on forever.
Those wingtips touching the ground, I guess you were able to put them in a straight level position during flight?
Yes,
Very clever.
Yes, they're just held down by cables, and they're spring loaded and then locked, although the locking mechanism didn't always work, and sometimes they would flap down a little bit, so I wasn't completely happy with them, but they acted as outriggers, but it was awfully wide. I had to look out for runway lights, and I always had to try to, because sometimes the wind would tip me from one side to the other. It wasn't the perfect solution. I prefer 3 wheels, not 4 like this. So, but yes, this is an outrigger system. So headed for the Alps, and eventually I got to where I could go over the clouds, and then the clouds rose up, and it actually started snowing. I couldn't understand it. I was in bright sunshine, but there was snow coming in my air vent, and I had to make a 7,000-foot spiral descent, and I really was depressed at losing all my altitude. But once I got below the clouds, it was no problem, and I continued on to Torino. And from Torino, I continued down to Sicily. And then one of my ground, you're going to see more about that later. And eventually later in 2009, I tried to go to North Africa, but the west wind was just killing me. You could see every day my flight got bent back. And this was the last day where I just could not penetrate. I think it was a good idea that we didn't go to Gibraltar, because it's so windy in the summertime. It's perfect for windsurfing, but not so perfect for slow solar-powered airplanes. So.
Which is your wind charge?
Wing loading.
Wind loading.
Okay, that's a good question. Well, let's see, 3 pounds. I know it in American units, 3 pounds per square foot.
3 pounds?
Yes.
I'll do the conversion for you while you're speaking.
Okay. So yes, after the European tour, I've been flying it many times, even did some loops just to prove that it's airworthy. But now I'm going to talk about where came the Sunseeker Duo.
Eric and all, the equivalent is 3 pounds per square foot equals less than 15 kilograms per meter square.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
15, less than 15.
So the first glider, I wanted to make a 2-seater for a long time, but I noticed that the back seat would always be under the wing, and the wing is big with solar panels on it. So I noticed this wonderful side-by-side Caproni, and this was my first inspiration. The other thing was the German University Stuttgart developed this nice solar airplane, and they actually lent me the molds for both the wing and the tail. So other than I made molds for my winglets, but this is the same wing. They had 25-meter wingspan, and since I had better solar cells, I reduced it to less than 22 meters. but the tail and the wing are basically the same. Actually, I added full flaps on the trailing edge, and I modified the airfoil slightly so I can go a little bit faster when I put the flaps negative, but it's the wing was designed by University Stuttgart. And they also designed this airplane, which is not solar, but it's battery powered. And you can see the motor location is on the tail because they don't want anything in front of the propeller or behind. And I was actually invited to fly this in competition in California. This is me with my friend Carl Kaiser, getting ready for the NASA's Green Flight Challenge, which we took second place in. Pipistrel won with a Siamese twin version of their Taurus motor glider. And here we're flying at a NASA base, flying with one of the engineers. But you can see this is really a perfect place for the motor, because many two-seaters, they have to have the wings swept forward. I'm sure you noticed that. And here we just have the perfect place to sit. We're in front of the wing. Wing never blocks our view. And we don't hear the motor very much because it's way back here. So there's your answer to the propeller location question.
But Eric, is there any way that you could put the propeller, since you say the pusher propeller like the torpedo would be maybe a more efficient one? Could you reverse and put it the back pushing it, or is it too much work?
Well, here it is right here.
Like that, something like that.
Well, this is much too close to the tail, much too close, because the propeller is losing efficiency because it's actually almost stalling every time it flies behind one of its, every revolution, it hits the wake 3 times. It's terrible. It has to be much further back. And I learned that lesson. And on my single seater, I put a big extension and moved it back, but you get a loss of efficiency here. So this is a University Stuttgart, 1996, and this is University Stuttgart, 2000 and I don't know, 2007, and they obviously moved the motor to the front. They could put the motor either place here, and the Germans are pretty good engineers, so I tend to respect their decisions.
You know, a lot of pilots are fascinated by details. Is there anything you can tell us about your experience? If detail is something that it could be something interesting to look at, or is it a surpassed idea from the past, or what are the advantages?
Did you say V?
Yeah, like a detail, a lot of advanced.
There's no advantage at all.
Okay.
It's, in fact, it's got some big disadvantages. And one of my friends was even killed on a V-tail made in China, Martin Wiesel, because when you make a big rudder input, you get a very much torsion on the tail boom. And my single seat Sunseeker, this one here, find a normal picture of it. Well, anyway, here it looks like it's right side up, but with this arrangement, you actually get a positive torsion, but you want to minimize. That's why a lot of airplanes like this one, we try to put the rudder some below the tail boom to reduce the twisting. You know, the elevator doesn't twist the tail boom, but the rudder can twist the tail boom. And on a V-tail, it's twice as bad. So I don't recommend V-tails for anything. Nothing. I'm sorry. So the other inspiration was obviously the STEMI S10, which seems like a natural step up from the Caproni, which had the similar cockpit. And Dr. STEMI, I spoke with him already in 1998, and he agreed in principle to let me use the molds. And this was in 2007, I believe. And here is a chart showing the progression. These are Gunther Raucholz. He made a solar powered airplane that I didn't mention, which led to my Sunseeker. And then the Caproni led to the STEMI and the Mccrady. So this pretty much shows, and the eGenius was slightly before the Sunseeker Duo. And actually, this starts in 1980, but the Caproni was actually even in the 1970s. Was a really good glider.
Okay.
A long time ago. So this, the Caproni, I just didn't have enough space, but the Caproni should be the father of all of these, I suppose, at least before. Just to give the Italians proper credit. It's a pity Caproni doesn't make gliders anymore, and there's some amazing modern jet engines too. They had quite a good jet-powered glider, I'm sure you know.
Did Eric, did Mr. Stemme, Dr. Temmen ever mention to you about approaching Caproni in the 70s to ask them if they wanted to do a glider together? Because I heard a rumor from the inside from an engineer that he kind of not stole the idea, but because Caproni said no, and then Stemme became Stemme, thanks to the idea of Caproni.
I don't know. I just,
Okay.
he was in East Germany, and it was very difficult. But even to get out.
That's okay. It's okay. I just wanted to know if you mentioned anything. Sorry, I took it off course. Go ahead with your presentation.
No, I never. Well, you know, there's an American glider made for training in World War II called a Pratt Reed that has the same cockpit side by side. So the Caproni cockpit's not the first. It's probably the first really good one, but I don't know. I can't really answer that. So this is molding the tail boom. It's actually, the STEMI is not a one-piece fuselage because of the Rotax engine in the middle, but it worked out perfectly for me because I needed to put my batteries and landing gear and control system in here. So I wanted to build, oops, I didn't mean to do that.
STEMI has a steel frame there in the hole, in the missing part of the fuselage, holding the engine and etc. Yeah. So I guess you used composites.
Yes, theirs is bolted together, although I've rarely seen them ever unbolt. I've never seen them. I mean, they do disassemble airplanes, but mine is permanent. I made square carbon tubes, and I just bonded them in, and they're very well laminated in. But I also added 0.5 meter. I stretched the fuselage because I wanted more space for the people to lie back and sleep. So I also had to move the tail boom up so that I had the correct aerodynamic relationship, because this is sloping down too much and there would be airflow separation. So I had to move the tail boom up and back, and is a bit of a compromise. But anyway, here it is back in Slovenia. My wife and I just testing it out. And we do a lot of mock-ups with plywood. These are the actual original STEMI control system, the sticks and everything. I flew with STEMI rudder pedals and a lot of original STEMI parts that I bought from their parts department. And here I am with, these are all people from the University of Stuttgart that helped me quite a bit. And we're trying to figure out, this is representing the frame, and the push rod for the elevator is already installed. This had to be installed very early on, but we're trying to figure out the landing gear here, which is not easy because I wanted tricycle landing gear and it hadn't been done before. So here we are trying to mock it up with what's actually the nose wheel. So the sliding window, was something I wanted to make separate for each person, and I had to make an entirely new fiberglass mock-up with the frame and everything, and figure out how this would work, because these railings are bending in all directions, and it's impossible for me to calculate or imagine. But anyway, these are the batteries I used. There's 90 cells. These are the lithium polymer from Kokam, and they're in 6 boxes, and they're on a sliding track. So I can even move them in flight. I can adjust the position of the batteries. And the batteries, they don't get any cooling other than there's an airspace between these. Not so much as you see here, but this is the correct gap here. And we just, I can let some airflow over the batteries. But this is just showing one in the tail boom. And here you can see these are my static ports. These on the sides of the tail boom, where I have the plastic tubing. And here is the main fuse. I think it's 100 or I forget, 100 or 200 amps. And batteries ready to be closed. So there's three of the modules. And this is the battery management system that keeps the batteries balanced. And this was a test fit early on, but you can see it's very, very close. This is in the rear position, and this is in the front position. So when I'm flying solo, I have the batteries all the way forward, and with a passenger, I move them back.
Impressive. What's the total mass of the batteries?
The cells are 45 kilograms, and it's only about 3% more packaging. I have very low packaging weight, so less than 50 kilograms. This is laminating the bottom skin on the wing. It's in the top mold, but the molds are much too heavy to bring the bottom mold over. And I had to make custom molds for the center section. And this is my wife putting Nomex honeycomb over the prepreg. And whoops, these are out of order here, sorry. I didn't. This is cutting the carbon fiber for the wing spar caps. This is a big roll of carbon prepreg, and okay, I thought I had these in better order. But this is Roman Sushnik, who makes the motors for Pipistrel, and he makes very, very good direct drive motors. And I put the motor, I could have put it back at the fin or up at the spinner, but I decided to put it exactly halfway. So the motor goes right here. And the power wires actually run through, this is just a mock-up of these dorsal fin here. So this is all just in the early stages. My wife did all of the connecting of the solar cells, and we laminated them into these large panels and vacuum bagged them into the wing molds to build the wing skins. With the, you see we have 3 freezers here. This is where we stored all of our carbon prepreg. Almost the entire airplane is made from prepreg, which is composite materials that already have the epoxy built in the right ratio, and it requires an oven to cure it. So here's the horizontal stabilizer, and this is actually, the wing doesn't even have the bottom surface on here. This is just an early test where you can see the nose gear, but the main gear doesn't exist yet, and we are just doing some test fitting. Yeah, here you see the wing with some skin on and some skin not on, and you can see the separate flap. So,
Eric, one of our viewers is asking about Cockhamps. I don't know what it are. This is somebody, it might be somebody actually involved in electric engine, Lucas. So do you know what,
Yeah.
Aldo, maybe you want to?
COCAM is the very best lithium polymer batteries. It's the most popular, and they're from South Korea. They're really good batteries.
Are you happy with them? Would you choose them again, or what is the status nowadays with the batteries?
The status is that COCAM was bought by, COCAM is a South Korean company, but they were purchased by an American company, and the American company decided that they don't want to support any more manned aircraft. So they won't sell them for manned aircraft, is the status of COCAM.
Seen it already in many fields,
Mhm.
engines and so on.
But unmanned aircraft, no problem. And military, no problem. So
Of course.
you can kill people as long as you're in the military, I guess. But you can't
Especially from
fly.
remote.
Anyway, that's another subject. So this is the carbon prepreg being applied. I think, yeah, this is the first layer going onto the mold. Yeah, the mold is painted gray. And then this is the Nomex honeycomb that forms the, we do this in 2 cure cycles so that we can remove this tape and fill any gaps. And then we put another layer of carbon fiber.
We have received a very technical question about the curing. What temperature was necessary for curing?
Well, these molds are all just styrofoam, and they can only resist 100 degrees centigrade, maybe 2 degrees more, but even 105, they get destroyed. So we had to use a very low, this is a centigrade. We used exactly 100 degrees centigrade, and we had to use many, many hours because it's better to use 120. But this is a mold made from styrofoam.
And did you also use prepregs?
Yes, yes. That's why. Yeah, this here is just simple styrofoam.
Okay.
Here.
And the prepregs, what temperature did you use?
100 degrees centigrade.
Again, okay. For
Yeah,
the prepregs. Okay.
Yes, it's a special prepreg. It's low temperature. It's the resin system is the key, and the resin system was designed to cure at 100 degrees centigrade. It's like at least 4 hours. So I would sleep in the workshop. But yeah, here you can see this is carbon prepreg. You'll see there's no cups of epoxy, nothing dripping down, but there's epoxy already in the carbon fiber. You see it's shiny here. And when you heat it up, it bonds to the honeycomb. So, and here it is, anyway. And here is the finished part ready to come off. And we cut this into 2 halves, but it was molded in 1 piece. So the main landing gear, it was actually intended to be welded titanium, but I could not buy the small quantities of the titanium tubing, so I decided to make them also out of carbon prepreg. And they're a little bit bigger than the titanium design, but they've been strong enough for all situations. So it's finally painted and ready to go to the airport. We never did fly it in Slovenia because we could not get a hangar anywhere in Slovenia. So we had to go to Italy. That's when we discovered Bulgaria, and we first flew it without the motor. Just one day we flew it just towing it down the runway.
With a car, I suppose.
Yes.
Our tow planes are too fast for the Sunseeker, I guess.
Yes, but we only needed to fly it down the runway, so the car was just perfect. So the propeller blades I made myself with these aluminum molds, custom made for this, and the first mold, a foam core, also from styrofoam. And then we put in Prepreg. This is an aluminum fitting. It's a variable, I should say adjustable pitch, but it's just ground adjustable. We don't change the pitch in the air. So here it is, first blade with the aluminum fitting molded in. And so this is a Prepreg propeller blade that we made, and that motor controller required considerable cooling. This is a strong fan that pulls the air. The funny thing is the propeller does not act as a very good cooling fan because there's very little airflow at the root ends of the propeller. So the motor here doesn't receive any really propeller blast because the propeller is more efficient at larger diameters. So this was the very first flight where I retracted the nose wheel, but I did this in stages. I even had fairings over the openings for the main gear, but eventually we gained enough confidence to also retract the main wheels. This was the first flight where I retracted anything here. And I made some flights where my wife flew the two-seater and I flew the single-seater so we could take some air-to-air pictures. And
Like
even
this?
though she was very, very light, but I was still having trouble catching up with her in the older airplanes. So eventually we just stopped flying the single-seater, I'm sad to say, and I just put it in a museum in Germany, but I'm happy that it has a nice, safe home, even though I miss my airplane.
Is it at the Wasserkuppe Museum?
No, it's at this very nice technical museum in Sinsheim, which
Sinsheim.
is near, yes, it's the museum. On the roof of the museum are two supersonic transports, the French Concorde and the Tupolev, flying in formation, and they have many, many other aircraft from Second World War and jets, but it's a technical museum with cars and submarines. And I met the owner, and he's an incredible collector. I liked him very much, so I'm very happy to lend him the airplane. It's got a
I'm
nice
publishing the link to that museum in the chat line.
excellent.
Technical
Yes.
Museum.de.
Yeah, and it's actually, the museum is in two parts. One part is in Sinsheim, and then there's another, I can't even remember the name of the other town, but it's really, you need 2 days to see both museums, and there's airplanes at both. So
Heilbronn, the second sound.
yeah, that's it. And yeah, it's first, it's maybe not the best museum in Germany is the Deutsches Museum in Munich, but Sinsheim is definitely worth seeing. A lot of unique, and you can go in both of the supersonic transports. It's a wonderful museum. So I highly recommend it. And you'll see this airplane from both above and below. You can, so, okay, we saw that. Okay, oh yeah, not sure of the order here, but yeah, I'm showing a cross-country flight to Pavulo, which was a wonderful place to visit. Okay, just some random pictures here. Okay. This was an expedition to the Swiss Alps, and we wanted to go to Torino first, but we had to go way around. And then the second day, I wanted to go directly over the Matterhorn, but this point here, I failed, and we had to go soaring again until the batteries were recharged fully. And on the second attempt, same day, we made it to the Alps. So this is taking off from Torino, and this was the very last part of the climb where we're just trying to get, and the amazing thing is this is in August, and there's so much snow in August. When you're living in Voghera, Italy, you can't imagine that there's ice and snow anywhere in the world. It's so hot. But believe me, there's a lot of snow in Switzerland.
You must have been well above 3,000 meters.
Yes, yes, we're near the Matterhorn. So, and I took my wife for a tour of all the glaciers. We were so high, and my wife's daughter was driving the camper van for us. We don't bring the trailer. I trust the airplane to always return home, so we don't bring the trailer. But we had some wonderful flights over the Alich Glacier, and that's my favorite place to fly is the High Alps in Switzerland.
All of us, we love it.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. So yeah, this is the Eiger and the Monch. In fact, yeah, this I was taking my wife's daughter along for a sunset flight just before we went out to dinner. So and there it is again, the Eiger and Monch from a different angle. So, okay, yeah, I guess I was going to talk some about the European tour, or specifically, yes.
I have read a couple of interesting technical questions from our participants.
Okay.
And I interrupt you. So,
Yeah.
Jean-Marie asks how you could, and was it difficult, get a US experimental registration while flying in Italy and building the aircraft in Slovenia? And probably, I guess, the Sunseeker duo never visited the USA.
That's an interesting question. I'm
sorry. Maybe it was a bit too interesting.
Well, we have a very professional designated airworthiness representative who is empowered by the American FAA to give us an airworthiness certificate. And he also did the same thing for the eGenius before it came to the United States. We also had the same thing. So he's done several aircraft for me.
Oh, great.
It was
somebody asked if the propeller in the position where it is creates turbulence and prop wash on the elevator and vertical stabilizer and rudder.
Well, it doesn't have very much power, and it's a 2-meter diameter, so it's pushing a lot of air only a little bit.
Lower speed, okay.
Yes, it's not a very fast propeller. It's less than 50. Actually at this altitude, it's about 15 or even 1600 RPM. No, I don't notice anything, and if anything, it helps the rudder. Whereas when we had the propeller behind the tail, it was big trouble because, and also on the ground taxiing, because then the propeller fights the rudder. Here, the propeller helps the rudder. Like if you're taxiing on the ground, and normally we steer with the nose wheel, but if you try to steer with your feet on the rudder pedals, the propeller is pushing air over the rudder. And having the propeller behind the rudder, it's trying to fight against the rudder. It tries to straighten it out. So anyway,
thank you.
So I wanted to show you some of my pictures from going down to Sicily, because I really enjoy Italy and I have some fun questions. It's almost like a contest for your Italian viewers, you'll see. But yeah, we're going to talk about, so this was going from Voghera to Pavulo. So I did it also in the single seater, but I have 20, you can't see probably very well, but there's an arrow here. I had a headwind, or almost crossing headwind, 22 knots. I think you have a picture of it later here.
Yeah.
Oh, here it is. Okay, 25 knots here. It says up here, headwind. Terrible. I'm just trying to fly to Sicily, and I'm pointed in completely the wrong direction because of this terrible wind. So I just kept going higher and higher, and of course the wind is stronger and stronger, but this was one of the first times that my ground crew arrived before me, and they kept asking me if I was making it, and I just said slowly, you know, I have 25 knot headwind, but I reached Pavulo, and it was yeah, this is my very first time. This was in April 2009. Absolutely beautiful coming in there, and the wonderful Aero Club. They were very I wanted to use this opportunity. This is my ground crew. This is our camper van. And this May or June, I'd like to make an expedition down the coast of Croatia with my wife. And we're looking for volunteers to drive the van. And I pay all of their expenses. And they also get to go for local flights in the Sunseeker Duo. So I just thought I'd mention, this is what people need to drive. No trailer. We don't bring the trailer. So this is taking off from Pavulo, and I wanted to go to Rieti this day. And what's his name? Brigatore?
Brigliadori.
Yeah, he had mentioned Guidonia, that there was a glider club there.
As an alternate, yeah.
Yes. And
Sonia.
that was very exciting. I was expecting to land in Rieti, which was grass, but we had weather like this, and it was so black that okay, so this is on the flight direct from Pavulo to Guidonia. There, the last, if you see here, the last says Guidonia Military, but I didn't know exactly. So what I'd like to ask your Italian viewers is if they can tell me what airport this is. This is somewhere between south of Pavulo, and it has this very interesting hieroglyphics here. It looks like an Egyptian dog here. This is the ears and the face, sitting with its feet forward.
It's a motocross track for motorcycles.
Do you know what airport this might be?
No.
No,
Okay.
I don't. Anybody
Well,
know?
someone can type in if they know. I'm just curious. So then here's another one. You can't really see in this picture, but there's 3 glider trailers here. This was probably even more difficult, but this is a glider field right here. And then I came to this very large lake. Maybe you know what lake this is. Somewhere.
Lake Bolsena, I think.
And here's airport right here.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
So by the lake, I'm just curious if anybody knows these.
I know something about it. There was in this one at the lakeside, there was a yearly meeting for ultralights.
Oh.
I don't remember the name of this place. I'm sorry.
So
Can I help? Panicarola. Somebody said the Panicarola. Mauro Lorenzoni said the Panicarola, but it's not probably the one at the lake. Mauro, which one was that? Maybe this? Or the one with the motocross? Mauro, which one is Panicarola?
I would like to
The
write
one
it
on the
down.
lake. He says the one on the lake. Panicarola. Okay. Thank
Okay.
you, Mauro.
Okay, well, if anyone figures out what those others are,
Lake
curious.
Trasimeno, that's right. Lake
So
Trasimeno.
when I landed, I landed at Guidonia, and I was immediately met by military vehicles with large caliber guns, and they told me, no, this is not a glider field, this is military. And right after they told me that, a 2-seat Grobe 102 or 103 landed there, and I said, no, you said there's no gliders. And they said, oh, that's a local or something.
Local club. Yes, there's a local club. And
I was
riding
immediately arrested and questioned, and of course, though, they recommended a good hotel and restaurant, and they helped me write my excuse so that I could take off without paying any fine or anything the next day. So they were super nice and friendly. And the next day, I went to Salerno, but the weather was not very good. I had a lot of clouds, and even though I'm like, this is over about 2,000 meters, I feel like I'm almost landing, you know, just fighting my way through between the clouds and the mountains, and rarely, almost no sun. You'll notice I'm in the shade. This was the day I learned why you don't wear a shirt this color. You see my shirt that I'm wearing? This is what it does to your photographs. So
Reflections.
yes, don't wear a shirt like this or you get this. So
Lots of snow.
anyway, yes, in April. So yeah, it's sometimes I felt lower than a snake's belly here. I just was thinking, how am I going to reach Salerno when I'm, you know, because I have no sun and no lift. I'm just looking for the wind blowing against anything so that I can just hang on and get a little bit further. And then sometimes I have to go around, like here I have to go more left or right, because this is just I just felt like I was a hero when I finally reached Salerno. And I was not, and the airport had no activity. Here's Salerno Airport right here. And there was no activity at all, no flights, but whoops, they, here I am coming in at Salerno, but they said that I needed to announce myself 24 hours in advance. So there was a lot of questions.
Yeah, no traffic and a lot of airspace.
Yes.
We are used to it.
They're following me. What are you doing? Where did you come from? So the next day was one of the most beautiful and amazing flights I've ever had, because I flew along both coastlines. First, I had to start out with some difficult terrain again, and no places to land. And I actually had to eventually go through this hole without really knowing what's on the other side. I was looking for a long time, thinking, ooh, this looks like, but once I was through, I started the motor and I ended up, this is over Scalea, and it's going from a straight line from Salerno to Crotone. I flew along both the west coast and the inside of the Italian boot east coast. So it was a beautiful flight, but I had to, you see all the clouds over the mountains. Here I was having my lunch at 10,000 feet, just over the ocean, wonderful. But I had to cross the mountains, and this looked like my best opportunity. You see this pyramid-shaped cloud here, very interesting. It looked like this is the perfect place to go through, but I'm not in a jet fighter. I cannot reach this in 5 minutes. So I'm flying absolutely as fast as I can with the motor, straight line, no turns. And you know how the clouds can be. As I'm approaching, it's looking like two giant fists closing in, like a mousetrap closing on me. And my ground crew was asking me on the radio, you know, how I'm doing. And I said, I'm not sure. I don't know. And I'm just climbing, clouds are climbing, I'm climbing, and I can't see the other side. And I actually made a video in the middle, and this was a frame from the video where it was just exploding. But I made it through, and this is the view of where I came through, right through there. And
Eric,
after that, yes.
Mauro has found an answer for the first of the airport you have shown, the one with the motocross track.
Ah.
That's Arezzo.
Okay, I'm going to write that down. Arezzo. Okay, I know that name, but Arezzo. Okay, I'll look it up on a map. I would like to see that.
They practice skydiving as well as the local aero club. There used to be gliding activity.
So here I'm headed for the other side of the ocean, but Crotone is still under this pile of whipped cream up here, as you'll see later. So I was very happy to be out of the Apennines and headed for the coast here. But I just told my ground crew, I'm high, go to Crotone. I'll meet you in Crotone. And I was surprised to see it's not exactly the other side of Italy, but it's the inside of the Italian boot. So it's opposite coastline for me. And the problem was that more south I went, the more clouds, and eventually it became completely covered. And I decided to go on top because there's no more mountains. And I decided that if I got in trouble, I can just go out over the ocean and I should be able to get around the clouds. So it didn't look like it would be too turbulent. And I just usually don't like to go on top like this, but it was no problem. And I was looking back thinking, maybe I should go back. See, I can still see planet Earth behind me here. But I continued on top, and then I even found some wave conditions, some very mild wave lift. This was really the end of Italy, Crotone, and nice airport. I made some local flights there, and then headed for Sicily. And there was a north wind, but for some reason I decided not to go towards Palermo. I decided to go towards Syracuse. This is Messina there. And very quickly I was downdrafted more and more, losing altitude, really unhappy about this. You can see this is saying I have a 8-knot wind from the side, but this really more than that because of the turbulence. And I'm just flying on the wrong side of Mount Etna here. I should have gone towards Palermo. I don't know why.
You were following the eastern coastline of Sicily.
Yes.
With a northerly wind, yeah. So going down to Syracuse and Taormina, probably.
Yeah. So this was not a happy time right here, and to be in a.
I have many questions, but one from our participants is: did you have big trouble with the ATC controllers?
No, I didn't talk to them. I just went. So,
Mauro informs us that probably the grass strip in the flatland could be Torre Alfina.
Torre.
If it's not too far from Rome, it's Torre Alfina, where we have the National Aerobatic Gliding School.
Really?
Yeah, with Pietro Filippini.
Okay, well, I'll look on Google Earth and see if that's
Torre Alfina, yeah. And I have a question for you, which is a more general question. Your pictures are beautiful, and I particularly loved the ones in the mountains, and especially the ones in the Alpi Apuane with the marble caves, which, by the way, are older than the Renaissance. Most of the most famous sculptures and statues were built with that kind of marble.
Wow, right from Masa.
Yeah. Do you? Many people ask themselves, not today, but many people ask me the question: why did you do it? Why did you build these aircrafts? And judging by your pictures, I would say you are doing it because you love to fly them.
Well, I learned to fly sailplanes in the United States when I was young, but I noticed that we were very much tied to the tow plane and the home airport. So I like very much the idea of self-launching, but I really do not like gasoline engines. I wouldn't mind a little jet so much, except the fuel consumption and air pollution and all that. But I don't like piston engines on gliders much at all. So when I flew the human-powered airplanes, it gave me the idea that you can be. I was really actually hoping that we would invent human-powered airplanes, and yeah, Brian Allen was involved with this. The Bionic Bat had batteries, and I was thinking about a rubber band or spring or something that you could wind up even with your muscle power, where you could get to soaring altitude without an electric motor. And I think that still could be possible to have a self-launching glider that has not even an electric motor. Just I actually built a large-scale rubber band, but batteries are much better than the rubber band, it seems. So the answer is I don't like engines, and I like also in the American Soaring magazine, there was an article by a American sailplane pilot named Jack Lambie. I don't know how many people know of Jack Lambie, but he was a glider pilot. He had a Fournier motor glider, and he wrote an article for Soaring magazine called Heavy Trip in a Light Ship. And it was about an ultralight or several ultralight sailplanes that were traveling together, and they were basically migrating cross country. And their self-launching method was they had an electric winch inside the sailplane, and they would make a wooden peg in the ground, and they would self-launch themselves from a winch, and then they would wind in their tow line. So that was Jack Lambie's idea of how an ultralight sailplane could be self-launching. But
Eric,
that
that is a very amazing story about the self-launching winch. I have a question from someone from Florida, from US.
Wow.
Is a very technical pilot. He's a glider pilot and an instructor too. He asked me to ask you, where do you see this going? All of us, we're here tonight. We're following your story. We're so amazed and we're so jealous of your experience, and we would like to see you proposing us, telling us about the future and what kind of commercial development of your product that might, be spread around the world and maybe become available to everyday's user. Because you said that you really are doing this for your passion, that you're driven by your own passion, which is nice. But what are the future? What kind of proposal did you get, or your intentions for this development?
So yes, we've tried to market this idea, but it's not accepted well by power planes because they want more reliable propulsion day and night, all weather. And it's not acceptable for glider pilots either because they're predominantly competition and speed oriented. So it's really amazing. One of my last passengers in Osopo was a professional paraglider pilot, and he said it changed his life because it's so fast. He thought that my solar airplane was unbelievably fast because he's used to flying paragliders. So, and hang glider pilots feel the same way. They are just amazed by the performance. However, sailplane pilots are not so impressed. They would rather simply fly on their wits. It's easy for me to go up and find wave lift and thermals because I just use the motor. So it's not so much a sport. I mean, I think you could make something faster, but if you put solar panels, for example, into an Antares, it's not going to make much difference that you have this solar power coming in. The Antares electric motor glider, it's a good competitive sailplane, but it requires much more power. So
So at
It's
the
looking-
moment, you don't foresee, you have not been approached, you're not been searching for a partnership with maybe with some structure company that could start producing in serious your project.
No, I mean, I'm friends with Shemp Hirth. They're actually one of my sponsors, but they have no interest in this, and neither it's not let's see, how can I put it? I don't see the market for it because it's not as high performance as a sailplane. In good weather, sailplanes are faster and they can fight against the headwinds better. So I don't really see it
I'm
yet.
very surprised, Eric, because maybe I've been seeing all this explanation you give and these beautiful stories, and all I think is how much I wish I was with you with all these flights, and I wish I could have access to your machine. I was lucky enough that I cruised myself with a Fournier. You mentioned a Fournier,
Yeah,
from Arezzo to London, and that was about 20 years ago, and that will never forget. So all your flying is just absolutely beautiful. The way you travel Europe, left and south, from the Alps to Sicily, and we're also happy that you chosen Italy as a country to do all this flying.
well, thank you. Well, I think it's a lot easier to come up from being a hang glider pilot to this than from a sailplane pilot to go down in performance, because a sailplane pilot's always going to miss having the weight and the speed. It's possible in the future that there could be, it needs to be ultra light in order to fly on solar power. So it's just, for example, the front electric sustainer is a very good electric option, and I'm really happy that they can even self-launch. For example, the was it called the Silent? It's Italian made, the single seat.
It's Alisport used to make
Yeah.
it, and then it moved.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are proud that we were first. Unfortunately, as everything goes, Eric, you know that it's timing. Silent came too early. I think they sold more in America than almost in Europe. You have a few models flying in US.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
I had all the numbers, all the cars, but it was not in the good timing.
So with the front electric sustainer, you're never going to get the high propulsion efficiency because of the small propeller. And the STEMI S10, I've owned two STEMI S10s in the past, and you can fly them as a powered airplane. I've flown one across the United States, and it's not very efficient because of the small propeller. You need a large diameter propeller to be efficient.
As
And
I know, that has been the limitation. So yeah. Eric, we're getting to the end. We've been talking a lot, and we really enjoyed. Just one technical question I have for you, and then you can finish. I don't know if what you have left, if I interrupted you.
Not much.
One technical question is one of our viewers asked me personally to ask you about the lifespan, expected lifespan of your solar panels, and the decay, what you've noticed in decrease, how they decrease year by year. So make an example, how long you expect to last, and also what are you decreasing in performance you've seen in the last few years?
Well, the only decrease in performance is the batteries. The solar cells, I don't leave the airplane outdoors day and night, but the solar cells themselves basically do not degrade at all. It's more the lamination materials, and making everything waterproof. It's actually easy to make it waterproof from the outside, but you actually have moisture coming from the inside of the wing and the edges, especially like the trailing edge, because rain and dew collects on the very back edge and gets in the gap between the flap and the aileron. And it works so that we have some corrosion, especially on the single seater. But we don't have any degradation.
So how long, once you finished your model from day that you start flying, how many years do you expect to be flying it without any problems, major problems?
At least 20 years.
Okay. And the batteries at the moment instead?
My batteries are 10 years old and they're losing capacity, but they're still working.
You're still happy, you're still satisfied.
It really depends with the lithium batteries on how, okay, we try to store them cold. Like if I'm not here, if I have to work in the summertime, I take the batteries out and I put them in a refrigerator. If you run the batteries down low and charge them up high, you'll wear them out in about 3 years. So for everyday flying, I only go 80% charge, 20% down. I don't use, you know, I don't have an actual cutoff on the batteries because I figure that if you need to make it home, for example, one time at Voghera, I went hunting wave lift in the north wind in the Apennines, and I didn't find the wave, and I barely made it back. I had to run my batteries right down to 0, and I really thought I wasn't going to reach the airport. But so there's no bottom cutoff. The pilot can destroy the batteries if he wants to. I decided to give the pilot that option, but there's an audio alarm. There's a annoying sound in the cockpit saying that you're damaging the batteries. So
okay, Eric, I think we're getting to our end.
Okay.
Aldo, unfortunately, Aldo had a problem connecting, so they asked me to sort of fade out this beautiful event. I've noticed, I was so impressed about the participants. We had about, from 70 to 80 participants the whole evening. I was hoping for something more. I noticed that they were all from all over the world, as Aldo said at the beginning. So this is fantastic. You are what I describe you as a frontier of flying for me, in general. And so we're very happy. Is there anything you would like sort of to say to our viewers?
No, I just like to say hi to Brian Allen and Kit Lee out there, and hopefully my friends and whoever family. It's kind of funny that it's a one-way communication, but I'll communicate with them by email and see what they thought. It's kind of a strange organization the way I did it, but I mixed it all together. So
fantastic. Listen, Eric, while we finish, and Piero might say goodbye to you, and maybe he might want to say something. We can enjoy your last slides if you keep on pressing and show us. We really love your slides, and sure, maybe we can do another session or something else another time soon. But
okay. Well, the last thing I'd like to say is if there's anybody interested in flying in the Sunseeker Duo in this summer, they should come and go on we're going to go down Croatian coast. It's not going to be wave soaring like you saw in the last presentation, but we want to explore.
Well, you extend my invitation to your wife. I definitely, I'm in Florence, and I know your wife would love to come to Florence, and there's plenty of airfields. So you have to promise to bring the Sunseeker Duo around Florence. You can stay with me, and we'll do some flying together. Okay.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'd love. There's a castle I'd love to go see. It's this Moorish. I forget the name of it right now, but
yeah, I know where it is. It's right by Arezzo. It's the Moorish castle, famous.
Yeah, I'd love to go see that.
Let's have Pierre Fax maybe want to say something at the end.
But also Aldo is with us again. Aldo, welcome back to us. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you all.
I just want to say some. Alberto,
thank you for organizing.
no, maybe Eric would like to say something about the new glider.
Ah,
Oh,
Which new glider?
I saw a new power, a new glider a few seconds ago. No.
Ah, yes. Let me see if I can get there. Just a moment.
Eric, don't keep secrets from us. We'll find out your new projects. You have to tell us all the secrets, huh? Be nice to all the
Okay.
viewers.
Let's see. How do I do it? New share. I don't know here. Okay. I guess I'm. Well, yes. I would like very much to. How do I do this here? Come on. No. Just a moment. Yes, I like this Italian design very, very much. This is the Partenavia P86, which has changed names very many times.
Technum.
Vulcan Air and-
Technum.
Yeah, I know, but originally it was Partenavia.
Vulcan Air now.
Yes, it's changed names many times.
Well, we're sure very honored because you started with an Italian glider, Caproni,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
now you're finishing with another Italian machine. So that's very for Italy.
I love this airplane. I've been inside them and I've imagined. So normally it's only 12-meter wingspan, but this one is 20-meter wingspan, and it needs big wing to fly on solar power. But this is designed for a customer in Africa who just needs short range transportation, short field takeoff and landing. And you can see this on my website. There's animations, and it's got big landing flaps and powerful motors for short takeoff. So just please visit the website and you can read all about it. But I would like to work with the Italian company in cooperation because they already have this very expensive or very beautiful optics on the nose, because I love the forward visibility. And especially if you're flying in Africa, you need to be able to see the landing ground very carefully in case there's animals or obstacles. So
You don't want to eat lions, right?
right. I don't want to hit anything. So yeah, I would really like to build this, and I know it could be practical for some applications such as these short range flights in Africa that I mentioned. So
Okay.
Eric, does this huge experience you have accumulated provide you also with job opportunities and probably?
yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a meeting with the Japanese in less than 1 hour.
Oh, I see.
I'm still working. Yes, I'm working on big solar drones for internet. Yes, I've been quite busy lately. Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
we're very happy that you gave us this opportunity. We all look forward, and I think glider pilots, yes, they look for performance, but on the other hand, the charm of electric flying, it's a little bit something that has been wanted to reach for, and you made it. You made a dream reality. So I think it's very
Well,
nice.
in fact, on both my airplanes, I was a little bit too conservative, and the wing is a little bit too big, because I've never actually had to land, and that tells me that I could have had a slightly smaller wing. So, but it can't be really small the way sailplanes are. Then you can have an electric motor, but the solar panels aren't going to give you much of an advantage. And airplanes like the E-Genius that I mentioned before, that airplane can't fly cross country very much because it needs a big charger. So E-Genius, the infrastructure doesn't exist, whereas with the Sunseeker Duo, we don't need any infrastructure. We have never used the charger when we're on a cross-country flight. We charge from it.
Jean-Marie Clement, ask few words about solar stratos.
Ah, yes.
Ah,
Yes. Raphael Donjam. Well, let's see. Yes, we've been in contact, and I've been watching his project, but I don't really know what I can say about it. It's another 2-seat solar-powered airplane, but they've just really started flying it. I will see what they do this year. I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know.
Well, you're there in the middle of all of this, and you started it ahead of people. So we really wish you that you find your niche and you find your product, and you can
Thank you.
come back to us with and we say, oh, we knew the guy. Oh, we know who the guy is. Pierre Fox, you wanna end the session?
okay, I end the session. Eric, thanks a lot for your speech. It was amazing experience.
Wow.
And thanks to reply to all technical questions, of course. People love to know about solar glider. I was sure about this. You have teach us many things about solar world, and also about your adventure, of course, many adventures. I hope this technology will soon be available for everyone. And if will, that's also thanks to your work.
Oh, thank you.
We appreciate a lot your work. And I think we conclude this evening of course, to thank all my friends who helped me to organize it this evening. Andrea Venturini, Davide Cescato, Alberto Simeoni, and of course, Aldo Cernezzi. Finally, I want to say something. I think we can learn an important thing tonight. Eric, you are writing the history. We are just read it. Thank you to everybody. Thank you again, and see you on flight, Eric, and all of you.
Well, come and visit me in Osopo when the weather's a little better.
I do. Thank you.
Grazie, Eric.
Grazie a tutti per la bellissima serata.
Grazie mille. Ciao.
Thank you very much. Ciao.
Okay. Buonanotte. Arrivederci, amigos. Paisanos.
Ciao, Eric.
Okay.
Good night, Eric, and best regards to kiss to your wife.
Okay, yeah, she's right here working, so. Hasta la vista. Let's see, how do I go? Okay, stop sharing.
Ciao. Ciao, buonanotte. Have a good night.
Meeting.
Bye, have a good one.
Okay.